My name is Ethan, 24, a bartender in Portland, Oregon, coasting through life with coffee pours, late-night guitar sessions, and a stack of unpaid bills. But one crisp fall day, a single sentence I never meant to say out loud changed my world. I was at my best friend's house, and in front of his mom, Rachel, I blurted, "She's more beautiful than any girl I've dated." Her blush, that quiet smile, it was like a match struck in the dark, igniting something I couldn't extinguish. It drew me into a secret that was thrilling, terrifying, and more real than anything I'd ever felt. I'm Ethan, and this is my story. I'm not the guy who goes looking for trouble. I'm the guy who blends into the background, slinging drinks at Brew and Brew, a bar and coffee shop in Portland's Arts District, where the air hums with creativity and the faint scent of espresso. My life was a loop. Wake up, work, listen to customers' dreams and regrets, then crash in my tiny apartment with its peeling paint, a lumpy couch, and a couple of guitars I'd strum when the world felt too heavy. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine, until last September, when everything shifted. I met Jake, my best friend, in a college music theory class 2 years ago. He's 22, a drummer with a contagious laugh, always rocking faded band tees, think the Rolling Stones or Guns N' Roses, and a mop of dark hair that never stays in place. We bonded over our obsession with 70s rock, our disdain for overpriced craft beer, and a knack for sarcastic banter. Jake works at a vinyl record store downtown, and we'd spend hours debating whether Led Zeppelin's Ivy or Pink Floyd's Dark Side was the ultimate album. He'd been hounding me to come over to his place, which was actually his mom's house, in a sleepy Portland suburb with neat lawns and trees that exploded in red and gold every fall. I figured it'd be a chill Sunday. Some video games, maybe a beer. No big deal. I pulled up in my clunky Honda Civic, the kind that rattles like it's begging for retirement. The house was straight out of a postcard. White wooden siding, a manicured lawn, and a porch swing creaking in the breeze. Jake flung open the door, his Nirvana tee wrinkled, a can of soda in hand. "Yo, get in here, man," he said, grinning. "Mom's floating around somewhere, but just act like she's not here." I chuckled, stepping into the warmth of the house, expecting nothing but a lazy afternoon. Then I saw her, Rachel, Jake's mom. She was in the kitchen, chopping vegetables with a steady rhythm, her presence filling the space like a melody you can't shake. She was about 42, but she didn't look it, not even close. Her brown hair fell in loose waves to her shoulders, one strand tucked behind her ear, and she wore a fitted navy sweater that hugged her frame, paired with jeans that seemed tailored to her. Sunlight poured through the window, catching her cheekbones, and for a moment, I forgot how to move. She wasn't just beautiful. She was alive, radiating a quiet confidence that made the room feel smaller. "Hi there," she said, looking up with a smile that hit me like a wave. Her voice was warm, smooth, like honey stirred into tea. "You're Ethan, Jake's friend, right?" My throat tightened, my palms suddenly sweaty. Yeah. Hi. Nice to meet you. Ma'am." I cringed internally. "Ma'am? Seriously?" She laughed, a soft tinkling sound that made her eyes crinkle at the corners. "No need for ma'am, just Rachel's fine." Jake groaned from the doorway. "Mom, come on, don't freak out my friends." Rachel shrugged, her smile turning playful, and went back to her cutting board. But I caught a fleeting glance from her, curious, maybe even teasing. My stomach flipped. We headed to the living room, Jake messing with the Xbox while I sank into the couch, trying to act normal. My mind was elsewhere, replaying that moment in the kitchen. Rachel's laugh, the way her eyes had locked onto mine. Jake was ranting about a rude customer at the store, and I was nodding along, barely listening, when the words slipped out. "Dude, your mom's more beautiful than any girl I've dated." The air froze. Jake stopped mid-sentence, his controller dangling, and stared at me like I'd grown a second head. "What the hell did you just say?" My heart slammed against my ribs, panic flooding my veins. I hadn't meant to say it out loud. It was a thought, a reckless, unfiltered thought that had somehow escaped. Before I could stammer an excuse, I heard a faint clink from the kitchen. Rachel stood in the doorway, a dish towel twisted in her hands, her cheeks tinged with the slightest pink. She didn't speak, but her lips curved into a small, almost private smile before she turned back to the stove. My pulse was a drumbeat in my ears. She heard me. Recover. She she looks super young, Doesn't seem like a mom. My voice cracked, betraying me. Jake squinted, his brow furrowed, then shrugged. Yeah, I get that a lot. Mom's got some eternal youth potion or whatever. He laughed, turning back to the game, but I couldn't shake the heat crawling up my neck. Rachel moved through the room a few times, setting out a tray of cookies or refilling our water. Each time, I felt her presence like a magnetic pull, my eyes drawn to her despite my best efforts to focus on the screen. When it was time to leave, she walked me to the door. Thanks for coming by, Ethan, she said, her voice softer now, like it was meant just for me. Jake's lucky to have a friend like you. Thanks, Rachel, I said, my hands jammed in my pockets to hide their trembling. Her eyes met mine, and for a split second, I felt like she could see straight through me, every thought, every flutter in my chest. I climbed into my car and sat there, the engine idling, my mind a whirlwind. What just happened? It was a stupid comment, a moment that should have faded, but her blush, that smile, they were seared into me. I told myself to let it go. She was Jake's mom, nearly 20 years older than me, off limits in every way. But as I drove home, the autumn leaves swirling in my headlights, her face was all I could see. A few days later, I was on break at Brew and Brew, leaning against the counter, scrolling through Instagram to kill time. A notification popped up. Rachel, Martin followed you. My heart lurched. Then another. She'd liked a photo from months ago. One of me at Cannon Beach, standing windswept in a hoodie, the ocean roaring behind me. I stared at the screen, my thumb frozen. Why this photo? It was buried in my feed, not some recent post. It felt intentional, like a signal. I clicked on her profile, my pulse quickening. Her posts were understated but striking. A latte with delicate foam art, a golden hour shot of the Willamette River, a selfie in a park, her hair catching the breeze, her smile unguarded. She looked like someone who lived fully in each moment. I hesitated, then liked her river photo, my fingers shaking slightly. I followed her back, telling myself it was just courtesy, but deep down, I knew it was more. That weekend, Jake texted, "Yo, come over. Mom's making ribs and they're next level." My stomach nodded, a mix of excitement and dread. I couldn't say no, not to Jake, and definitely not to the chance to see Rachel again. When I arrived, she opened the door, wearing a flowing green dress that made her eyes glow, her hair loose and slightly tousled. "Ethan, right on time," she said, her smile warm enough to melt the crisp fall air. My chest tightened, and I wondered if she could sense the chaos she was causing inside me. "Hey, Rachel," I said, forcing a grin. "Heard your ribs are legendary." "You'll have to tell me if they live up to the hype," she said, winking as she led me inside. Jake was in the living room, wrestling with a Bluetooth speaker that kept cutting out. Rachel asked me to grab some plates from a high shelf, and as I handed them to her, our fingers brushed. The touch was brief but electric, her skin warm against mine. Her eyes flicked to mine, holding me there, and I felt a jolt, like we'd shared a secret in that split second. Dinner was a test of my self-control. Jake dominated the conversation, raving about a new band he'd discovered, while Rachel tossed in dry, witty comments about his tendency to spill sauce on every shirt he owned. I laughed along, but every time Rachel's gaze met mine, my focus splintered. It was like we were speaking a language only we understood, woven through stolen glances and subtle smiles. Once, her foot brushed mine under the table, and though it could have been accidental, the tiny quirk of her lips told me it wasn't. After dinner, Jake darted upstairs to grab his charger, leaving me alone with Rachel. I helped clear the table, my hands unsteady as I stacked plates. "You don't have to do this," she said, her voice gentle, but she didn't stop me. "I want to," I said, standing close enough to catch the faint floral scent of her perfume. She turned, her eyes searching mine, softer now. "You're different, Ethan. Most of Jake's friends treat me like I'm invisible." My throat went dry. "You're not invisible, Rachel. Not to me." She froze, her breath catching, then smiled. A real, unguarded smile that made my heart ache. "You're good with words," she said, turning back to the sink. But her voice trembled slightly like she was holding back a couldn't control. Jake kept inviting me over, and each visit felt like a tightrope walk between restraint and surrender. One evening, Rachel asked me to fix her laptop, which was running slower than molasses. We sat on the couch, our knees brushing as I clicked through settings, my hands sweating despite the cool room. Her arm rested against mine, warm and steady, and neither of us moved away. I was hyper-aware of every point of contact, my heart pounding as I explained what I was doing, trying to sound calm. When I finally got the laptop running smoothly, she clapped her hands, her face lighting up like a kid on Christmas. "You're a genius," she said, and the way she looked at me, grateful, admiring, present, made my chest tighten with a feeling I wasn't ready to name. Another time, when Jake ran out to grab snacks, Rachel opened up about her life. We were sitting at the kitchen island, the room dim except for a single pendant light, casting a soft glow. She told me about her ex-husband, who walked out when Jake was 12, leaving her to juggle single motherhood and a mountain of bills. "I had to rebuild everything from scratch," she said, her eyes fixed on a photo of Jake on the mantel, his gap-toothed grin frozen in time. "I don't regret it, but sometimes I wonder who I'd be if I didn't have to be so strong all the time." Her voice cracked, just slightly, and I saw a flicker of vulnerability she rarely showed. "You're incredible," I said, my voice low, earnest. "Not just as a mom, as you. You're more than what you've had to do." She looked at me, her eyes softening, a mix of surprise and gratitude in her expression. "You make me feel like I'm more than that, Ethan," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. The air between us felt charged, like a storm was brewing, and I wanted to reach for her hand, to tell her how much she was starting to mean to me. But Jake burst through the door, a bag of chips in hand, and the moment slipped away, leaving my heart racing and my thoughts in knots. One night, Jake texted that he'd be at his grandma's for a few days because she was sick. "Mom's home if you need anything," he added, casual as ever. I didn't plan to go over, I swear I didn't. But that evening, I was driving aimlessly through Portland, the city lights blurring past, my mind restless. Somehow, I ended up on Rachel Street, my hands clammy as I parked. I sat in my car for a full minute, arguing with myself. This is a bad idea. Go home. But my heart won out, and I knocked on her door, my pulse pounding like a drum. She opened the door, wearing black leggings and an oversized sweater, her hair in a loose braid that made her look younger, softer. Her eyes widened, then softened, a smile tugging at her lips. "Ethan? I thought you got lost." Her voice was teasing, but there was a warmth there, like she was glad I'd shown up. "I was just in the neighborhood," I said, scratching my neck, knowing I sounded like a bad liar. "Thought I'd say hi." She raised an eyebrow, her smile turning knowing, like she could see right through me. "Come in," she said, stepping aside. The house smelled of vanilla and cedar, a candle flickering on the coffee table. We sat in the living room, sipping chamomile tea she'd brewed, the silence comfortable but heavy with unspoken words. The only sounds were the faint hum of the fridge and the occasional creak of the house settling. She asked about my dreams, and I told her about my plan to open a bar someday, a place with live music, warm lighting, and a vibe like a friend's living room. I admitted I wasn't sure I'd ever pull it off, that I was just a bartender with big ideas and not much else. She listened, her eyes locked on mine, and I felt seen in a way I hadn't in years, maybe ever. "You've got passion, Ethan," she said, her voice steady. "That's rarer than you think. Don't let it go." "What about you?" I asked, my voice softer now. "What do you want, Rachel? Beyond Jake? Beyond the law firm?" She traced the rim of her mug, her expression distant, like she was looking at a life she'd almost forgotten. "I want to feel alive again," she said, her voice barely audible. "Not just going through the motions, not just being the responsible one. I want to feel like I'm me." My heart pounded, and before I could stop myself, I said, "You make me feel alive, Rachel. Every time I'm here, it's like the world makes sense." Her breath caught, and she looked at me, her eyes bright with something raw, hope, maybe, or longing. "You make me feel like I matter, Ethan," she said, her voice trembling. "Like I'm not just someone's mom, thick with possibility." I set my mug down, my hands trembling, and leaned closer. She didn't move away, her eyes searching mine, vulnerable but unafraid. And then, like gravity pulling us together, I kissed her. It was tentative, soft, her lips warm and yielding against mine. Her hand rested lightly on my arm, grounding me, and for that moment, nothing else existed. No guilt, no rules, just us. When we pulled back, her eyes were wide, her breath uneven. "We shouldn't be doing this," she whispered, but her hand stayed on mine, her thumb brushing my skin. "I know," I said, my voice hoarse, my heart racing. "But I don't want to stop." She smiled, a mix of sadness and want, her eyes glistening. "Neither do I," she said. And in that moment, we crossed a line we couldn't uncross. That kiss opened a door we couldn't close. When Jake was around, we were careful, keeping our interactions brief and polite, like actors playing parts. I'd joke with Jake, play video games, and act like nothing had changed, but my eyes would find Rachel's across the room, and we'd share a glance that said everything we couldn't. When Jake was gone, though, we were us. Two people caught in something neither of us could explain. We'd cook together, her teaching me how to make her famous chili, while I teased her about her terrible knife skills, her laughter filling the kitchen like music. We'd watch old movies, Casablanca one night, The Big Lebowski the next, her head resting on my shoulder, my arm around her, and I'd feel a peace I didn't know I was missing. One night, she told me she'd always wanted to learn salsa dancing, but never had the courage. I laughed, pulling up a Latin playlist on my phone, and we danced in the kitchen, stumbling over each other's feet, her laughter loud and free. Her eyes sparkled, and I thought, this is what happiness feels like. But it wasn't all perfect. The guilt gnawed at me sometimes, especially when Jake was around. He was my best friend, and here I was, falling for his mom, hiding it from him. I'd catch myself watching Rachel too closely, then force myself to look away, my stomach twisting. Rachel felt it too. I saw it in the way her smile faltered when Jake mentioned his dad, or when she'd pause mid-sentence, her eyes distant, like she was weighing the cost of what we were doing. One afternoon, Jake came home early while we were on the couch, too close for comfort, our shoulders brushing as we laughed over a bad rom-com. I jumped up, muttering about losing my keys, my heart pounding like I'd been caught stealing. Jake's eyes narrowed, his voice sharp. "Why are you here when I'm not home, man?" I pointed to a random vinyl on the coffee table, my voice too high. "Came to drop this off. You lent it to me, remember?" Rachel stepped in, her voice smooth as silk. "I asked Ethan to stay for lunch, honey. Want some? I can heat up the leftovers." She moved to the kitchen, casual as ever, but I saw the tension in her shoulders. Jake relaxed, but his eyes lingered on me, questioning. That night I texted Rachel. "He's on to us." I could feel it. She replied, "He suspects, but he won't ask unless he's sure. We just need to be smarter." "Do you want to stop?" I asked, my chest tight, dreading her answer. "No," she texted back after a long pause. "Do you?" "Never," I said, and I meant it, even though I knew we were playing with fire. The rumors started small, like whispers in the wind. Rachel's coworker, Sarah, saw me leaving her house one morning, my hair still messy from sleep. She gave me a knowing look when we ran into each other at a coffee shop later. "You're at Rachel's a lot," she said, her tone teasing but pointed. "You and Jake must be really tight." "Yeah, he's my best friend," I said, forcing a grin, my stomach churning. "Rachel's just a great cook." Sarah smirked, unconvinced. And I knew the gossip was spreading. Jake noticed too. One day we were grabbing burgers at a diner, and he said, out of nowhere, "You and my mom are weirdly close, man. She talks about you all the time." My burger turned to lead in my stomach. "Really?" I said, trying to sound casual. "Guess she likes that I help with dishes." He didn't laugh, just watched me, his eyes searching. "Just don't do anything stupid, okay?" he said, his voice low, and I nodded, my throat tight, hating how much I was hiding from him. The closest call came one Saturday. Jake was supposed to be out all day, so I went to Rachel's, my heart racing with anticipation. We were in the kitchen, her hands dusted with flour as we tried to make homemade pizza, laughing as dough stuck to our fingers. She smeared a bit of sauce on my cheek, her eyes playful, and I grabbed her wrist, pulling her close. We were inches apart, her breath warm against my lips, when the front door slammed open. Jake's voice rang out, "Yo, Mom, my heart in my throat. I'm back early." Rachel turned to the counter, grabbing a towel, her voice steady. "In here, honey. Ethan's helping with dinner." She handed me a cutting board, her eyes flicking to mine, a silent stay calm. Jake walked in, his backpack slung over one shoulder, and paused, his eyes darting between us. "You're here again?" he said, his tone half joking but laced with suspicion. "Yeah, Rachel's teaching me to cook," I said, chopping a bell pepper with way too much focus. "Pizza night, right?" Rachel nodded, her smile effortless. "You boys hungry? This'll be ready soon." She moved to the oven, her movements fluid, but I saw the slight tremble in her hands. Jake didn't push, but the air felt thick, like he was piecing something together. That night, I texted Rachel. "That was too close." She replied, "I know, but I can't stop wanting you here." One evening, we sat on her porch, the streetlights casting a soft amber glow over the quiet street. She wrapped a blanket around her shoulders, her hair catching the light, and her voice was quiet, almost fragile. "This can't go on forever, Ethan." My chest tightened, a cold dread settling in. "I don't want it to end," I said, my voice rough, my hand reaching for hers. She squeezed my fingers, her touch warm but heavy with unspoken fears. "Neither do I," she said, her eyes glistening. "But if Jake finds out, or if people start talking, it could ruin things, for him, for us." "We'll face it together," I said, my voice firm, a resolve I hadn't known I had. I wasn't just a kid with a crush anymore. I wanted to protect her, to protect what we had, no matter the cost. Her eyes shimmered, a tear catching in her lashes. "You make me feel like I can dream again," she said, her voice breaking. "Like I'm not just defined by my past." "And you make me feel like I'm enough," I said, my throat tight. "Like I'm more than just a bartender with big ideas." We didn't call it love, didn't call it anything. It was just us, two people who found something rare and held on tight, even as the world loomed around us. 6 months after that first kiss, Jake moved into an apartment with some college buddies, giving us more freedom, but also more risk. We'd sneak away to small towns outside Portland, places like McMinnville or Hood River, where no one knew us. We'd walk hand in hand through farmers' markets, share coffee in quiet cafes, and laugh like we were the only two people in the world. Those moments felt like stolen time, like we'd carved out a pocket of the universe just for us. Jake still doesn't know, not officially, but he's not clueless. One night, we were playing pool at a dive bar, and he said, out of nowhere, "You and my mom, there's something weird going on, but I'm not going to dig into it. Just, don't break her heart, man. She's been through enough." My stomach twisted, guilt and gratitude warring inside me. "I won't," I said, meeting his eyes, and I'd never been more serious. I hated lying to him, but I couldn't bear to lose what I had with Rachel. The rumors have quieted, but they're still there, lingering like shadows. Sarah, Rachel's coworker, makes sly comments at office parties, and a neighbor once raised an eyebrow when she saw me leaving at dawn. But Rachel and I have learned to be careful. No texts, no calls, just stolen moments when the world isn't watching. We've built a rhythm, a delicate balance between secrecy and truth. One night, we drove to the coast, just the two of us, the ocean stretching out under a starlit sky. We sat on a blanket in the sand, her head on my shoulder, the waves crashing in a steady rhythm. "This feels too good to be real," she said, her voice soft, almost afraid. "That's what makes it real," I said, kissing her forehead, my heart full. "It's ours, Rachel. No one can take that away." She looked up at me, her eyes reflecting the moonlight, and smiled. "You're right," she said, and for the first time, I saw her let go of the fear, embracing what we had, even if it was fleeting. Now, 8 months in, we're still us. Still secret, still careful, but no longer afraid. Jake's busy with his new place, his band, his life, and though we still hang out, it's not the same. He knows something, I'm sure of it, but he's chosen not to ask, and I'm grateful for that. Rachel and I have settled into something quiet, something steady. We cook dinners, watch sunsets, and talk about everything and nothing. Sometimes I stay the night, waking up to her soft breathing beside me, and I feel a peace I never knew was possible. I don't know where this is going. Rachel's 18 years older than me, with a career, a son, a life that's already been shaped by hard choices. I'm just a guy with a dream of a bar and a heart that's hers, whether I meant for it to be or not. But when I'm with her, the gap doesn't matter. She's not Jake's mom in those moments. She's Rachel, the woman who makes my world brighter, who makes me want to be better. And it's not a scandal. It's a secret, but the kind that feels sacred, like a vow we made to each other without words. We didn't break rules, we wrote our own, carving out a space where we could be ourselves, no matter what anyone else might think. If you ask me if I regret it, I'll tell you no, not for a single second. Because Rachel isn't just my friend's mom. She's the woman who taught me what it means to feel alive, to love without fear, to hold on to something real, even when it's messy. So, here's my question to you. Have you ever found love in a place you never expected? Maybe it was someone you shouldn't have noticed, or a moment that caught you off guard. What did you do? Did you chase it or let it go? Drop your story in the comments. I'm reading every single one, and I want to hear how you navigated those wild, unexpected sparks. If this story hit you, smash that like button to let me know, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Don't forget to hit subscribe and ring that bell for the Cheater's Diary. We're dropping raw, real stories like this every week, and I don't want you to miss a single one. If you're feeling extra bold, join our community on Patreon for exclusive behind-the-scenes content and early access to new episodes. Thanks for being here, for listening, for feeling this with me. I'll see you in the next video. Until then, keep chasing what makes you feel alive.